This is the rule of the square, which is a quick way to tell if a king can reach a pawn that is trying to promote up the board to queen. Normally, a person would have to just calculate out these moves in their head to see whether the king can reach the pawn in time going up the board. But the rule of the square shows if the king reaches inside the square of the pawn, the square is drawn here on an angle, and then around on a diagonal and coming back on a right triangle. Then, so here's the square. If the king at any time reaches that square, inside the square, it can reach the pawn in time. And this can be at farther distances. Here the square would be at the diagonal, here back. And if the king steps inside the square, it can reach the pawn in time to queen. It can stop it from queening. However, if the king is not in time for to reach the square is here, it can't reach the pawn in time, and the pawn will promote. So, and it can be another instance, a bigger square. If the king at any time it reaches inside that square, it can catch the pawn. There is an exception though with if the pawn is on the second rank, since it can move two squares on its first move, the rule of the square doesn't hold up because it moves two moves on the first move. So the square would actually, you have to treat it as if it treat it somewhat differently because the pawn moves two moves, and then the rule of the square doesn't apply with that. But for every other square, if the king gets inside the box of the square, it can reach it, and if it's not inside in time, then the pawn will be able to promote. So that's the rule of the square, and hopefully it can help with determining if the king will catch the pawn in time in the endgame.